Hey everyone, Carrie Beck here with Homeschool Coffee Break, where we help you stop the overwhelm so you can actually take a coffee break. Yeah, Meredith and I are here taking a little coffee break. Meredith Curtis is here with us, and she has lots of wisdom. She's already graduated her kids. So thank you so much for being here, Meredith.
Oh, Carrie, I'm so excited to be with you and talk about gratitude. It's a great topic.
It really is. Meredith, y'all know I run the 30 Days of Gratitude Challenge. And so I get guest bloggers to come in and post on our blog. And I think Meredith has done it every single year I've ever done this. So
I think
thank you
so.
for doing that. I know that's your heart. I know that's my heart. Gratitude just can do so many things for us. Before we dive into gratitude, could you just tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am a homeschooling mom. I graduated my five children, and now I'm grandmother to eight so far, and all of them homeschool. I'm so excited. And I am a pastor's wife, a worship leader, a writer, a speaker, and just I love ministry. I love ministering to homeschool families, and I've created a lot of curriculum, and I just started a mystery series. So I'm really having fun with that. And now my
That's
daughter just started one too. Well, she's still working on the books, but so we actually went out to lunch today. It's her birthday and we were talking about it. So anyway, I'm really happy to be here, Carrie.
Well, I know this doesn't have anything to do with gratitude. Well, it could, but tell us the name. I've read one of her books. So tell us the name of the mystery series for you and your daughter.
Okay, I don't know the name of my daughter's yet because she's written her first one and she's working on the whole rewrite thing. So,
Okay.
but my series is called Maggie King Mysteries, and I have five so far: Tea Time Trouble, um, Pumpkin Patch Peril, uh, Old Fashioned Christmas Murder, Community Garden Chaos, and Buried at the Beach. And the whole gist of it is I kind of looked back at the 80s. It's set in the late 80s. And my husband, back in the late 80s, my husband was going to seminary in Virginia Beach. So I set this detective, it's back in the 80s. She and her husband, they're not in Virginia Beach, of course, because it's not us, but I put them in a town in Tidewater called Hopeville, and they don't have any money, and they're in a brand new little town where everybody knows everyone, and of course Maggie just keeps running across dead bodies. So it's really fun, and I'm starting to fall in love with the characters because they're just, I feel like they're almost real people.
That's so good because really, when you read a good book, I don't know about you, but I am like thinking about those characters during the day when I'm not reading, like, oh, yeah. So y'all should grab one of those. They're just fun little books and they're this may not be the right word, but they're clean as far as like teenagers can
Yes,
read them as well. And so it's
yes.
not going to be real dark or anything. So that's beside the point. But we can still take that and use, like, you may not have much money, but we can still be grateful. So you have actually talked about gratitude as being a beauty secret. Can you sort of explain what you mean by that and how you've seen gratitude actually transform someone from the inside?
Okay, yes. And I've always believed this, and I remember my grandmother used to say to me, beauty is as beauty does. And I don't know if any of you had grandmothers that said that to you, but it always stuck with me. And when I was a young woman, teenager, young adult, young wife, I wanted to be beautiful on the inside, and from my grandmother, I grasped that principle that beauty on the inside flows to the outside. And one of the things, that passages that really stood out to me, was First Peter 3, 1 through 7, and how God commends Sarah as a beautiful woman because of her gentle and quiet spirit. And so that got me on the road to thinking about beauty. I actually have a Bible study called God's Girls Beauty Secrets, and it's for teenagers and young adults, but really it's for women up to 95 who want to be beautiful. But in it, I look at outer beauty, but I also look at inner beauty and different things that make you beautiful. Because what happens is when you're kind, when you're grateful, it changes your heart. And we'll talk more about gratitude, but gratitude changes your focus from self to the Lord. Kindness changes your focus from self to others. So when you're grateful, when you walk into a home, or you walk into work, or you walk into your homeschool co-op or church, and you're grateful, and you're having a conversation with people, and you say, this is happening and this is happening. God has been so good. And even though maybe we're going through some challenges, this is how God took care of us in this time. Then what it does is it changes the expression on your face. You have more of a smile. You don't have those frowny frown lines, you know, and you have a beauty that emanates from you. And I think people, they want to be around you when you're like that. They want to be around people that are grateful, because it's going to be raising them up rather than pulling them down. And so I've just seen that in my life, that um, I'm a pastor's wife, and I see all the terrible things that happen to people. Mike and I've gone through so many trials, and I think that sometimes the Lord just has to remind me, be grateful, be grateful, be grateful. And when I am grateful, I notice the way people respond to me is very different than when I'm, complaining and bitter, and, you know, so I think I think gratitude makes someone beautiful. And to add one more thing, beauty isn't just about a symmetrical face. I've heard scientists say, well, it's all about symmetry. I think beauty goes so much beyond that, because it's your poise, it's your confidence. And the most beautiful woman in the world, when someone that we think of beautiful walks into a room and they're like, here I am, I'm so beautiful. But a truly beautiful woman walks into a room, and she's like, God is good. I'm so happy to see all of you. And her focus is completely on other people. And that is beautiful. And it doesn't matter if someone's a Christian or in the world, they think that's beautiful. They're drawn to that. They're attracted to that. So,
I love that, and sort as you're saying that, I do believe that however you're thinking on the inside is going to come out in your facial expressions, in your gestures, the way that you hold yourself. I also think, unfortunately, the opposite is true. Someone who is bitter, I mean, I
mhm,
have friends that are still holding bitterness towards people, and they're the ones that are in the hospital all the time. They've got illness, like
yes,
physical illnesses. So bitterness in your heart can actually mess up your insides, and you're not the right person. But the opposite of bitterness, not that I don't know exactly the opposite, but I think of bitter, then you're forgiving and you're grateful and you're thankful and
yes,
you're kind. And that person, I think God just blesses. And you're really right. When you have that attitude, people are like, oh, I want to be, who wants to be around someone that's just complaining all the time? You just want to go,
exactly.
oh, here we go again. So, anyway, so true. Well, you mentioned your grandmother. Let's go the other end, and let's talk about your grandchildren. Are there some things that you have been doing or are doing to pass down these values of gratitude and of your faith as well? Do you have any traditions that you're really cultivating a spirit of gratitude that you did with your kids, or maybe you're doing with your grandkids?
Well, with Thanksgiving coming up this month, the first one I think of is we have a Thanksgiving tradition where before we say the blessing, we all pass around. Sometimes I pass around kernels of corn. There's like this Thanksgiving poem about kernels of corn,
Hmm.
but or sometimes we just share, but we share things that we're thankful for, and just that is really powerful because there's always tears because there's always something that's bittersweet, where someone's gone through something hard and yet they're thankful for the things God did through it or the people that helped them through it. And then there's just so much knitting together of family as people are thanking one another. And of course, my young son I mean, he's not so young anymore. He has 3 kids, but he used to always say, and I'm thankful for mom's cooking. So, but that was
That's
a
my
big tradition. And then another thing I do with my grandchildren specifically, because with my kids, we would set aside thankful times. Like we would say, let's just talk about what we're thankful for. At my church, I lead worship. A lot of times I'll say, hey, before we get started, does anyone have a praise report? Something God did this week. You just want to share because it's so good. And inevitably, someone does. So my kids have kind of grown up with me with that. But my grandchildren, they're not necessarily in my home. So whenever they come over, I always ask them, what was the best thing that happened today? And then I always say to them, isn't God good? And then they say, yes, he is so good. So that's not necessarily a tradition, but it's a habit that I've purposely cultivated with them to focus on the positive and be grateful. So,
That's so interesting. I was just, as I was listening to you, I hadn't really thought about this, but when I'm with my grandkids, especially if I'm taking care of them and their parents are gone somewhere, and we're getting ready for bed, especially when they're younger, like 5 and under, I like the best part of the day, but I'm like, okay, we're going to pray before we go to bed. I want you to think of one thing that you can
mm,
say thank you to God for, because sometimes when you're 3 years old, I mean, you just pray like your parents, whatever their parents pray.
yes.
But that way I'm like, we're gonna think the only thing you have to say is thank you, God. And it does sort of make them think, well, what did happen? What can I? And so I don't know. So then I'll throw some ideas out with them. But that's such a simple way to say thank you. And it's thank you to God for whatever had happened. I mean, sometimes we had macaroni and cheese for dinner. I will say my little 6-year-old, last time I was there a couple weeks ago, and I'm thankful that you're here with me. I was like, oh,
Oh, that's
okay,
so
you just melt
sweet.
my heart.
Oh, I have one more thing I thought of
Uh-huh.
is that on birthdays, we always do we always go around and talk about why we're thankful for the birthday person.
Oh,
So everybody shares, like, I'm so thankful for you because I love the way you do this. I love the way you do that. I appreciate. And that's another thing that we do. And it's my kids have carried it on so that like at uh Cooper, my grandson just turned 9, and we were at the birthday party, and they always start all their family birthday parties with just the mom or dad saying what they're thankful for with all the kids there. Like we used to do that just with our family, but they do it with all the kids' friends there. So I think not only is it a blessing to the other children, but it's a blessing to the parents that are there because then they can say, "Oh, that's a neat thing." But I think, and we do that a lot in our church too, with people on a birthday. If we're there, we'll say, "Oh, thank let's tell the birthday person why they're special or why we're thankful." And I think people need that. I noticed Paul does that in his letters. He'll say, I so appreciate you because of this and this and this. And I was talking to someone the other day, and I was like, Paul wrote to the Corinthians, who were the squirreliest church in all of the New Testament. And he starts out thanking the Lord for them. So there is no one we can't find something to be thankful for.
That's really important too, because I have heard people say, they're in a really difficult marriage, and they're just like, there's nothing good about my husband. There's nothing good. And I'm like, does he go to work? Now, maybe he doesn't, but does he go to work every day, for your family? Okay, there's one thing. Do you have a house that you live in, whether you rent it or own it, and who's helping pay for that? I mean, there's always, even in the most difficult situations, you can find something to be thankful
Yes,
for. So,
absolutely.
very good. Well, we're talking about sort of family. Is there anything, and I love your idea because I do think we want to give God all the glory, and always needs it. But He honors us, and He uses each other to honor and sort of fill our tank up.
Yes,
And so, what you're saying is just to honor the person of the day, basically. Does that mean
yes,
they did everything in their own self? No, God did it through them. But I think there is something about it's like we praise our children when they obey. Hopefully, we
right.
do, because if we don't, they're going to quit. But we want to build them up in godliness and in positive and keeping their eyes on Jesus as well. So I really like that tradition. I think that's really good. So,
Cool.
and it also gets us away from all the consumer focus, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah out there in the world and pulls us back. So, is there anything else, like maybe you're walking through a difficult situation at your home? Has there ever been a time where gratitude sort of shifted the atmosphere during that difficult situation?
It's so funny that you say that because my husband right now is battling cancer. And so it's been really hard on my kids and you know, the Lord has been really good. But one of the things that I notice is that, talking with one of my children, and we'll both be talking about, dad and or my husband, and then we'll both kind of sniff, like suck back the tears, and then we'll just talk about what we're grateful for, like what the Lord has done. And there's just so much like that God always has done. And so I think there seems to be something that I don't know where I got this in my head. I think because of that psalm that says, "Enter his courts with thanks, enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise." I think being a worship leader, and I always start with thanking God. So sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I just lay there and start thanking God. And so I've trained my children to try to find something to be thankful for. So even in the most difficult situations. And I remember years ago, this is over a decade ago, we didn't have money. Some things happened and we had enough money to pay some bills, but not all. And so the whole family, we got in the family room and we got on our knees and we were praying. And I remember in praying, we were desperate for God to come through, but yet our prayers were so filled with thankfulness. Like, we know that you're a God who provides, thanking him for all the times in the past that he had provided. And I remember when we got up as family from our knees, and I don't remember, like, that's one of the few times like we've been desperate and like gotten on our knees in the family room like that. We've gotten on our knees, but it's been more casual, you know? And so I remember when we got up from that, we were fully, fully confident God was going to come through. And I remember Jenny Rose, who just had a birthday today. I remember her saying, "Well, I just wonder how God is going to take care of this. I know He will." And it was just so beautiful because I think, there's no testimony without a trial. And
Yes.
so sometimes in the middle of a trial, when you can even just thank the Lord. I thank you that there's going to be a testimony in this. And I can one more thing, a story I can tell you that has to do with thankfulness is that my niece came to visit one summer. This is when Mike was in seminary. We had no money, and I would sell bows. I would make hair bows. They were popular at that time. And do you remember Victorian like
Yes.
style? Yeah. So I would make hair bows, I would sell them, and that was our grocery money. But if the hair bows didn't sell, oh, it's too bad, and so we were in that kind of season. We did have some groceries in the kitchen, but my niece was there. It was her birthday, and I said, "What would you like for your birthday?" And then I thought, wow, why am I asking her this? I don't have anything I can make her. And so she said, I would like a strawberry cake with vanilla frosting, and I would like crab legs. So I just like, oh. So I took her hand and I prayed with her this really simple prayer. She wasn't a believer at the time. I said, Lord, thank you that you're the God who provides, and you hear this little girl what she wants, and I pray that somehow you would do a miracle and provide for that. And I was not necessarily full of faith. About 5 minutes later, I was kind of like, what have I done? Well, we had this food pantry, and they would have, like, you could pay $1 and you could get a bag full of groceries. And that day, never before and never again, they had a strawberry cake mix and a vanilla frosting. So we brought it home. I made the cake. And then it was getting close to dinner. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to have to tell her. Sometimes God says no. And we get a knock at the door, and our pastor comes in, grocery bag about 4 feet high, filled with crab legs. Can you take these off our hands? He had like 4 more at home that they were eating. I don't know where he got them. I just remember saying, nothing is impossible with God. And that filled our hearts with so much thanksgiving. And believe it or not, almost every time we face a difficult situation, we remember that story, because God is a God of miracles, and we thank him again. Like, God has probably been thanked for that story by my kids that weren't even alive then, but my husband and me and all of our kids, because that's incredible, for God to do that. It was just really incredible. So, and I think when we pray boldly and see God answer, it builds a thankful heart in us even more. I mean, we have to be thankful no matter what the circumstances. But when we see God move, it helps us when we face difficult circumstances, because then there's a groundwork that, yes, God is good. So,
And just the fact that y'all, I think it's growing thankfulness with our kids, but also their faith, because when they see things like that, they do want to be thankful and continue to look back at that. But that is just another little step of building their faith that, look, God came through for us. Now, it doesn't always
yes.
come through in every situation. I think it's really important. Personally, I've been keeping a gratitude journal. If I had to do it over again, I would keep a family gratitude journal. But that way, you can record the things your kids are saying. And when bad things happen, you pull that thing out and read some of them. Or when you have a child that's complaining, you pull it out and go, oh, look, here's what you said 2 weeks ago that you were thankful
Yes.
for. And those kinds of things. God wants us to record what he's done and to be able to remember. Sometimes it's just verbally saying it, but sometimes because I forget sometimes what he's done. But the other idea is that we really believe in miracles, because
Mm.
sometimes we don't ask because we don't think he's going to come through. And yet you just shared stories. He came through. Who would have
Yep.
thought crab legs would show up there? So,
I
and I want to just
know.
repeat some. You said something about testimony and trials. I was like, you have to go through a test to have a testimony. The other one I've just heard recently is you have to go through the mess to have a message. And
Oh, I
sometimes we
love
do have
that.
to go through the mess to be able to have a message, to share God's message of what he's had to do. So those are some great stories. They encourage me. I'm like,
Good.
yay. So, okay, by the time this comes out, we're going to be sort of in that Thanksgiving, Christmas season. Do you
Okay.
have any practical activities that parents could do, families could do to really build a habit of gratitude in the hustle and bustle? And you're like, I can't do one more thing. And yet we need to sort of take a step back and see what's most important. How can we be intentional during these holiday seasons to build that habit of gratitude in our kids?
Well, first of all, the 30-day gratitude challenge.
Oh,
That is a great one. I love that. And that I love that it's geared for children and for teens. That's so good. Um, the the thing that I talked about earlier of going around before Thanksgiving dinner and sharing things that you're thankful for. As we were talking, I just thought, you know what I'm going to do for our church is I'm going to post at the top of our Facebook group and just put the word gratitude. And I'm just going to ask people Sunday, would all this month when things happen, will you just post under that things that the Lord did to come through, or answers to prayer, or things like that. So, but that what I used to do when the kids were little at Thanksgiving is I would put up a poster. Sometimes I did an answered prayer poster. I would write answered prayer, and then I would make columns. And then as God answered prayers, we could list the prayers. And or other times it was just like what I'm thankful for. There's a craft that I've done, not like maybe once or twice, a thankful tree where you make leaves and write something you're thankful for, include that on. Um, and I also think just, I think serving others gives us a grateful heart. And there's one thing that it's almost the time will almost be up to turn them in, but it's the shoebox Franklin Graham's ministry. And when the grandkids were really little, like 2 and 3, the oldest ones are 9 and 10. I still have like a 6-month-old grandson, but in another family. So these older two boys, I would take to the Dollar Tree, and they could fill the box, and then I would just purchase everything, and we would wrap it up, and they would write a note. But that just, you know, instills thankfulness. It could be serving at a soup kitchen. One year, I remember we adopted a poor family, and I remember it was a really dilapidated part of town, and we climbed up these rickety steps to the apartment on the second floor and delivered presents. And I remember, my kids on the way home, they were thinking, wow, how did we're so blessed. You just, when you see other people struggling, you realize how blessed you are. And another thing that we do is we sing Christmas carols and have devotions all through December. And, and Christmas Day, we have these super long devotions. It's basically Luke 2 with a Christmas carol after every verse, but we always sing like 3 or 4 verses. So it takes us like an hour. Then we sing Happy Birthday to Jesus. And what that has to do with thankfulness is it sets the tone that Christmas isn't about presents. Christmas is a birthday, it's about a king, it's a king's birthday, and we're going to make the main focus of this day Jesus, because when you focus on Jesus, I mean, Jesus has done so much for us. Even the fact that he came in the Roman Empire, which was so evil, like we think times are evil now, but the Roman Empire was so evil. He was born to a poor family, and he lived
Mhm.
a perfect life. And how many times did they try to kill him? And finally, he let them take his life, and he died for sins and rose again. And I look at that and I think the more that we can gaze on that as families, and I don't mean like, okay, here, I'm going to shove this down your throat, but in ways that are fun and relaxing and filled with love, the more our children can gaze on Christ, the more they will be thankful. And I think Christmas carols, there's something so powerful about the words to Christmas carols, especially if you go beyond verse 1. Even the song God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. Oh my gosh, there's like 8 or 9 verses, and every one of them is powerful. And I think that there's something about the theology in them. I and the old hymns too, but especially at Christmas time, the carols. So I know that may not be exactly what you were looking for, but for us, I think focusing on Jesus creates a thankful heart too. Above all, I think above all.
That's a good, oh gosh, it's been 10 or 15 years ago. We were singing "Oh Come All Ye Faithful," and we were singing the third verse, and hardly anyone ever sings that verse. They just sing "Oh Come All Ye Faithful." Um, and we were studying the New Testament. We were in the or like Roman Empire after Jesus time period, but the church was growing in our history. And there's a line in there, God of God and light of light, or something to that effect. And the reason it really struck me is we were studying, and I want to say Athanasius was like, he was like, Jesus
Yes.
was God. He was the Son of God. He was
Yes.
not just a man. He was God, and they were on the run. He was on the run because they wanted to kill this man because he was standing up to say, no, Jesus was actually God. And the phrase, and I may be in the wrong time period, but anyway, all this combined, whatever that phrase in that, oh, come all you faithful verse, God of God and light of lights, was exactly what they were saying back in history at that
Yes.
time. And
Yes.
Athanasius says, they're like, don't you know that you're going against the world? And he's like, well, contramundo, which is, well, I will be against the world because he's going to stand for Jesus Christ. And
Amen.
so you're really right. We need to expose our kids. Uh, the fun jingle bell songs and all that kind of stuff. I don't really, if you want to do that, that's fine. But you don't, and you don't have to do all of them. Pick one Christmas carol each year and just sing it all the time, but go into the verses, use it for copy work. You talk about what that means at the dinner table. You got me on a little soapbox, but that I think is
No, I
so,
love
so
it.
true. And also serving others. We did the same thing. I don't know when we started it. The kids were early elementary, and Steve was head of the benevolence fund, and he would pick one of the families that really needed help because he knew which ones were just trying to get free grab bags and didn't really need the help. And then we're just going from church to church. And we would pick one of them. And at the time, it's probably expensive for me, but we'd go buy a turkey dinner for them with all the whatever for
Oh,
4 or 5 people. And the first time I did it, I was at the store and I was like, they've got kids. We should get some Christmas gifts for them. And my kids were with me, and I'm like, okay, let's go see. They're 3 and 7 and 8 or whatever they were. And it was just a simple little something. And we didn't spend tons of money, but we started doing that. And it wasn't like we had it delivered like you. We went with the kids, we all went together, and we did that for 10 or 15 years
that's so
and would
neat.
take it to a family that didn't have much, and it really puts your kids in, it gives perspective to what is going on around us. And too often we see the people that seem to have more than us, and we don't always see the people that have less than us. So
That's
anyway, thank you
that's
for
true.
sharing that. It brought back some good memories.
Oh,
Anyway, well, I know you've got the Beauty Secret book. Is there anything else that might help people, or if people want to reach out to you, Meredith, what would be the best way to find out more about you?
oh, I'm glad you asked because I do have two resources that I think people would enjoy. One is called Celebrate Thanksgiving, and it has hymns and prayers and poems. It has the entire story of the pilgrims in it, from, going to Holland and then coming back and then going to the New World. And it has a lot of different like Thanksgiving things, a lot of info about that, like the Macy's parade. And then it talks about how to plan Thanksgiving festivities like a pie breakfast, I bet you've never heard of, or a praise and prayer brunch, or the big traditional family dinner, and or a family football game. And so it's got a lot of different social things that you can plan. Some are really simple, some are, more challenging. And then all like planner sheets to do it and things like that. And so I really enjoyed that book, and people who have gotten it love it. The other book is called Jesus Fill My Heart and Home, and it's a Bible study. It talks about, first of all, letting Jesus live and abide in our hearts. And then it talks about how to bring the presence of God into your home in a really practical way. It touches on cleaning and it touches on all kinds of aspects of homemaking, but it does have a great chapter on holidays. And it goes through the different holidays and how to celebrate holidays with a Christ centered focus. And so those are available at powerlineprod.com. I have a store, lots of resources, lots of curriculum, lots of high school classes, and Christmas unit studies, which are my favorite. And all those things are available in my store. I also have a blog on the site powerlineprod.com. And if you go there, you can have, there's links to our Facebook group. On our Facebook group is Powerline Productions. And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and everything else from there. So I hope you will look me up. I would love to hear from you. And let me know if I can answer any questions about our resources. Just reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.
That sounds great. And wherever you're listening to this or watching it, look in the show notes and we will have links to everything that Meredith has just mentioned. That Celebrate Thanksgiving sounds like awesome resource, probably something that would be used for years and years because you can't do all of it in one year. And then I love the idea of Jesus Fill My Heart and Home. That's where it all starts as well. Meredith, thank you so much for being here. As we close out, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yes, I would like to say this. Life is hard. And I'm sure some of you listening are going through challenges, maybe challenges with homeschooling your kids, maybe grown children who've wandered from the faith, maybe health challenges. And, Jesus promised that the least favorite promise in all of the New Testament is in this world you will have trouble. But it doesn't stop there. It goes on and it says, take heart because I have overcome the world. So I just want to remind you that Jesus has overcome the world, that he is for you, not against you, and that if you put your hope in him and your trust in him, he will pour out grace and provision for everything you go through in this life, and he will open your eyes to see so much beauty and so many blessings and so many people who end up coming in and just wrapping their arms around you and loving you that you don't expect. So draw near to him, he will draw near to you, and eventually one day, if you know him and are born again, you will be with him in heaven forever. So it starts with just opening your eyes and being grateful, but there is so much more, and it's beyond this life. God bless you, and happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas. It's a wonderful season.
Oh, thank you. So well said. So thank you, Meredith. Appreciate that. And I'm Carrie Beck with Homeschool Coffee Break. We'll talk to you next time.